Hey guys, today we're looking at Chapter 11, Section 4, Thomas Jefferson and the Republican Party. So yesterday you spent time looking at Alexander Hamilton and the Federalist Party. We're flipping the coin, so to speak, and looking at the prevailing group that held this different views from Hamilton, and kind of the spokesperson or the leader of the Democratic Republican Party would be Thomas Jefferson. Some background on Jefferson: he was one of 10 children born to a wealthy Virginian family. He was a gifted student who had learned Greek and Latin by the time he was 16 when he enrolled in college. He had a curious instinct and a drive to learn that stays with him throughout his entire life. Eventually, he's going to take the land that he inherited from his father and farm and harvest crops from the land, the main crop being tobacco. And as with many of the plantation and landowners at this time, he was somebody who owned slaves, and the slaves were used to help run the plantation. Eventually, he's going to set aside the farming and enter into Virginia politics. Jefferson was an eloquent writer. He was very crafty with prose and the written word. Something that wasn't a big skill for him was actually giving the speeches. So when it came time to deliver written word, they would pick someone else to do that. The majority of the Declaration of Independence, though, for example, is attributed to Jefferson writing that document. His views on human nature. Jefferson really held out hope that informed citizens could make good decisions for themselves and for their country. He wanted citizens to be involved in the government process. He wanted them connected to it. He didn't want a layer, so to speak, between the people and the government to which they entrusted the ability to take care of the big matters in the country. So this is really different from Hamilton and the point of view of the Federalists, whereas they thought the wealthy and the elite, those who owned the country, should be those who are running it. Jefferson is quoted as saying, "I have so much confidence in the good sense of man that I am never afraid of the outcome where reason is left free to exert her force." So if given an opportunity, people are going to reason through things because of their good sense within what Jefferson felt was their good sense within human nature. He had faith in people. Yeah, this unending faith in people doing the right thing really came from his time as a planner, and he really held those who worked the land in high esteem. He felt that farmers were essentially God's chosen people, and it was just something that he forever felt connected to. The image here shows him in the garden of the presidential home, the White House. Avid gardener was something that he really kept up even as he continued through his political career. His views on government: he favored democracy over any other form of government. He didn't have the patience or really the time to entertain that the Federalist view that only the best should rule the country. He and the other Democratic Republicans felt that this kind of view really came too close to the monarchy that they overthrew during the Revolution, or finding themselves under the rule of a king. Republicans and Jefferson believed that the best government was one that governed the least. So a term that we hear today is small government. This is something that Jefferson would connect with and support. He really wanted a small government with limited powers, one that would be essentially leave the people alone so they can enjoy the liberty that they've earned. Keeping government small, he insisted on a strict construction or interpretation of the Constitution. He felt that the Constitution meant exactly what it said. Any addition to the powers that were listed would be dangerous and unconstitutional. He wanted strong state governments, He felt that the state government was closer to the people, and the closer it was to the people, the more control they could have over the government. The economy, he, like we mentioned, he's come from that country background. He felt that the country's future lay in the hands of the plain Republican farmer. Those, as I mentioned this before, those who labor the earth are the chosen people of God. He wanted an agriculture-based economy. Another term would be an agrarian society, one based on farming. And he opposed ideas like the national bank. He really felt that the bank would, yeah, absolutely would lend money to merchants and businessmen and be supportive of that. But when it came time for farmers looking for money to purchase more land to increase the size of their farm, that the bank wouldn't be something that would support that. His views on Great Britain and France, despite the increased violence in the French Revolution, Jefferson and the Republicans continued to support the French revolutionaries. They felt that it was their attempt at throwing off that yoke of the monarchy, the collar, the shackles, and they were really supportive of them pursuing their freedom. They viewed the Federalists, and this is a term from the time, they viewed the Federalists as British bootlickers for supporting Great Britain. Something we might say today would be somebody who's a brown noser or a butt kisser, and felt the death of a few thousand aristocrats was a small price to pay for the freedom from tyranny. So those who were losing their lives in the revolution, he felt it was justifiable. It was okay, because power then would be pushed out to rest in the hands of the people. So the Republicans initially welcomed a representative from France, Jeanette, Citizen Jeanette, and throughout the revolution, the people in charge of the revolution in France really wanted to encompass this sense of everybody's the same, everybody's equal, so they took on the moniker or title of citizen. He arrives with much fanfare. People were, basically throwing him parades. And at this time, during Washington's presidency, Washington really wanted America to stay neutral, to stay out of getting involved with foreign affairs or conflicts and disputes between other countries across the Atlantic. He didn't feel it was America's place. And Citizen Jeanette, he asked for support in the war against Great Britain. The president stated that the United States didn't want to be drawn into a war. And essentially then Citizen Jeanette goes out and he makes speeches against the president. He tries to provoke the U.S. into war with Great Britain. He has several failed attempts at starting a Canadian revolt against Great Britain. And then he tries to get the U.S. to fight the Spanish in Florida, which is still, Spain still has that foothold in the continental United States there. And one of the few times that Jefferson and Hamilton really agree on something is that this guy's got to go home. He's not doing anybody any good. And he asks that France recall Citizen Jeanette, which they do, and he goes home. And eventually there's going to be some other dealings with France that we'll talk about during Adams' presidency that really severs the ties for a while with France and America, and they lose that relationship they had built up throughout the Revolutionary War. So at the end of this, we understand what the two sides of the debate are, the Federalists versus the Republicans, and we'll take some time and really hash out what their arguments are and which ones eventually, which side eventually is going to win out throughout the coming years as we're looking at this early part of the United States as a as an entire entity and country. So thanks for your time.